The human man who stumbled into my trading post at dusk looked like death warmed over, his face pale beneath the grime and his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip the counter. "Please," he said, his voice raw with exhaustion. "I need a room for the night. Just one night." I looked him over, noting the way his eyes kept darting to the windows, the way he flinched at every sound from outside. This was a man running from something, or running towards something equally desperate. My trading post sat at the edge of the borderlands, where human settlements gave way to orc territories, and I had seen plenty of desperate souls pass through. But something about this one made me hesitate before quoting my usual price. "How much coin do you have?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral despite the concern gnawing at me. He fumbled in his pockets and pulled out 3 copper pieces and a bent silver coin. Not nearly enough for a room, not even in a place as rough as mine. I watched him count the coins twice, his face falling further with each count, and something in my chest tightened. "The room is 2 silver, I said, though I could have asked for less. I wanted to see what he would do. His shoulders sagged. "I understand, thank you anyway." He turned toward the door, swaying slightly, and I realized he was going to walk back out into the night where wolves and worse things prowled. "Wait." The word left my mouth before I could think better of it. He turned back, hope flickering in his brown eyes. "I have a proposition." I should not have made the offer. I knew that even as the words formed. But I had not slept properly in weeks, plagued by nightmares that left me gasping awake in the darkness of my room, and the thought of another night alone made my skin crawl. The dreams had started after the orc raiding party had come through, the ones who had called me traitor for trading with humans, who had threatened to burn my post to the ground. Now, every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like an intruder. "What kind of proposition?" he asked warily. "You can stay in my room tonight, in my bed." I saw his eyes widen and quickly added, "Not for that. I only hate sleeping alone." The silence stretched between us. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. I could see him weighing his options, pride warring with exhaustion and fear. I was an orc woman, green-skinned and tusked, everything his people had taught him to fear. But I was also offering shelter, and he was desperate enough to consider it. "Just sleeping?" he finally asked. "Just sleeping." "You stay on your side, I stay on mine. You get a safe place to rest, and I get—" I trailed off, not sure how to explain the gnawing loneliness that had been eating at me since I had chosen this path, this life between 2 worlds that wanted nothing to do with each other. "Company," he finished softly, and something in his understanding tone made me look at him more carefully. His eyes were kind despite the exhaustion, and there was no disgust in his expression when he looked at me, only curiosity and a bone-deep weariness that matched my own. "Exactly." He extended his hand. "Isaac Ellsworth, and you have a deal." I shook his hand, noting how thin his fingers were, how rough his palm. Kraska. Leading him upstairs felt surreal. I had never brought anyone to my private quarters, least of all a human man. The trading post below was neutral ground, but my room was mine alone, my one sanctuary in a world that had rejected me. Yet here I was, ushering this stranger through my door. "The wash basin is there," I said, gesturing to the corner, "and I have bread and dried meat if you are hungry." "I am grateful." He moved to the basin and began washing his face and hands with the kind of methodical care that spoke of military training or hard-won discipline. I busied myself laying out food, trying not to stare at the way his shirt clung to his thin frame. He had been handsome once, I thought, before whatever had happened to him. He still was, in a haunted sort of way. We ate in silence, sitting on opposite sides of the small table. He consumed the food like a man who had not eaten properly in days, but with careful manners that suggested better times. I found myself curious about his story, about what had brought him to my door looking like a ghost. "You do not have to tell me," I said when he caught me watching, "but I would like to know what you are running from." He set down the bread and was quiet for a long moment. "Not running from, running toward. My sister lives in Thornhaven, across the border in orc territory. Our mother is dying, and I promised I would bring Brielle back home before the end." His voice cracked slightly on the name. "But I lost my horse 3 days ago to bandits. They took everything except the clothes on my back and what little coin I had hidden in my boot. I have been walking since then, trying to reach the border before it is too late." The raw grief in his voice struck something deep in me. I had lost my own family when I chose to trade with humans, when I refused to participate in raids against human settlements. My clan had cast me out, called me weak, said I had betrayed the old ways. I understood what it meant to be caught between worlds, to choose a path that left you utterly alone. "Thornhaven is 2 days' walk from here," I said. "3 in your condition. I know." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I know I might not make it in time, but I have to try. I made a decision that would change everything, though I did not know it yet. Rest tonight. Tomorrow I will take you on my horse. We can make it in a day and a half if we push hard." His head snapped up. "You would do that? Why?" Why indeed? Because I was tired of being alone, because his story had touched something in me, because I saw in his desperate determination a reflection of my own stubborn hope that love could bridge impossible divides. "Because I can," I said simply. We prepared for bed awkwardly, both of us acutely aware of the strangeness of the situation. I gave him a spare shirt to sleep in, turning away while he changed. When I turned back, he was already climbing into the far side of the bed, pressing himself against the edge as if to take up as little space as possible. I extinguished the lamp and settled on my side, leaving a careful distance between us. The darkness felt different with someone else in the room, less oppressive. I could hear his breathing, slow and steady, and gradually felt my own body begin to relax. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "I know this is strange, but thank you. You are welcome." I hesitated, then added, "I meant what I said, about hating to sleep alone. Since the war bands came through, I have not been able to sleep properly. Every night I wake up expecting to find knives in the dark. I understand. After my father died, I could not bear to be alone either." The silence felt like drowning. His voice was soft, intimate in the darkness. "My wife used to say I was like a puppy, always needing someone nearby. Used to. She died 2 years ago. Fever took her in the winter. I am sorry." We fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence now, one built on shared understanding. I felt myself drifting toward sleep in a way I had not in weeks, the knots of tension in my shoulders finally loosening. Beside me, Isaac's breathing deepened and evened out. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without nightmares. I woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of birds outside. For a moment, I was disoriented by the feeling of warmth beside me. Then I remembered. Isaac was still asleep, turned toward me now, his face peaceful in a way it had not been the night before. The lines of stress around his eyes had smoothed, and he looked younger, less haunted. I slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him, and dressed quickly. By the time he stirred, I had packed supplies for the journey and was preparing breakfast. "Good morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "I thought I might have dreamed last night." "No dream. Are you ready to ride?" He sat up, and I saw determination settle over his features. "More than ready." We ate quickly and headed down to the stables. My horse, Storm, was a sturdy gray mare with the temperament of a saint and the endurance of a mountain goat. She had carried me faithfully since I first established the trading post, and she barely flickered an ear when Isaac approached. "She is beautiful," he said, running a hand down her neck. "I had a horse like her once, before." "What was her name?" "Sage. She was smarter than most people I knew." He smiled sadly at the memory. "The bandits who took her better treat her well, or they will regret it. She bites." I found myself smiling despite the circumstances. "Storm kicks. We make a good pair." The ride started awkwardly, with Isaac seated behind me, his arms wrapped loosely around my waist. I could feel his tension, the way he held himself carefully apart from me. But as the miles passed and the terrain grew rougher, necessity forced us closer. By midday, his grip had tightened, and his chest pressed against my back as we navigated a steep hillside. "Tell me about your sister," I said, wanting to break the silence and distract him from his worry. "Brielle is younger than me by 5 years. She always had more courage than sense, which is why she ended up married to an orc farmer and living in Thornhaven." He paused. "I mean no offense." "None taken. It takes courage to marry across the divide, or foolishness, sometimes both." He laughed, and I felt the vibration of it against my back. True enough. When she first told us she was in love with an orc man named Gracker, my father nearly had an apoplexy. But then we met him, and he was kind, gentle. He loved her completely, and she loved him. What else mattered? Many things matter to most people: tradition, fear, hatred. I suppose you are right, but Brielle taught me that love is worth the risk, even if the world calls you traitor for it. We rode in silence for a while after that, both lost in our own thoughts. The border country was beautiful in the late spring, rolling hills covered in green grass and wildflowers. But it was also dangerous, contested territory, where neither humans nor orcs held clear authority. We passed abandoned farmsteads and burned-out trading posts, grim reminders of the conflicts that flared regularly between our peoples. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, I guided Storm toward a sheltered hollow I knew, a place where we could camp for the night without being easily spotted. Isaac helped me tend to the horse and gather firewood, moving with the easy competence of someone used to frontier life. "You have done this before," I observed as he expertly arranged the kindling. "I was a soldier for 6 years, stationed at the borderlands. After my wife died, I went home to help my mother with the farm, but I never forgot what I learned out here." He struck the flint and coaxed the spark into flame. "Strange to think that I spent all that time fighting orcs, and now I am riding to an orc village with an orc woman to save my mother's life." "You regret it? The fighting?" He looked up at me, his eyes serious in the firelight. "Every day." I was young and stupid and angry at the world. The army seemed like a way to make sense of things, to have a clear enemy and a clear purpose. But the more I fought, the more I realized there was nothing clear about it. Just scared people on both sides, trying to protect what was theirs. I sat down across from him, studying his face. "Your sister chose well, I think. Her brother has wisdom." "I do not know about wisdom, but I know I am tired of hatred, tired of seeing good people die for bad reasons." He poked at the fire, sending sparks up into the darkening sky. "When Brielle first moved to Thornhaven, I visited her. I was terrified, expected to be killed on sight. Instead, her neighbors brought me food and asked about my crops and invited me to share their fire. They were just people, Kraska, just people trying to live their lives." Not everyone sees it that way. No, but maybe more would if they took the time to look. We shared a simple meal of dried meat and travel bread, washing it down with water from my canteen. The night air grew cool, and I pulled my cloak tighter around my shoulders. Isaac added more wood to the fire, and we sat watching the flames dance. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a while. "Yes." "Why did you help me, really?" You could have turned me away, kept your secrets and your solitude, but you did not." I was quiet for a long moment, trying to find words for feelings I barely understood myself. Because I am tired too. Tired of being alone, tired of being between worlds, tired of waking up afraid. When you walked into my trading post, you looked the way I feel inside. Desperate and lost and trying so hard to keep going. I could not turn you away because I could not turn away from my own reflection. I am glad you did not. He met my eyes across the fire. I have not felt this at peace in months. Even riding toward my mother's deathbed, even terrified I will be too late, I feel less alone than I have since my wife died. Is that strange? No, I feel it too. We settled into our bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire, but I found myself missing the warmth of having him beside me. The ground was hard, and the night sound seemed louder without walls around us. I must have been shifting restlessly because Isaac spoke into the darkness. "Kraska, are you all right?" "Yes, just not used to sleeping outside anymore." I heard him get up, heard the rustle of his bedroll being gathered. Then he was spreading it out next to mine. "May I?" "Yes." He lay down beside me, not touching but close enough that I could feel his presence like a shield against the night. I turned onto my side facing him, and in the dying firelight I could see him watching me with an expression I could not quite read. "Better?" he asked. "Better." I slept dreamlessly again, waking only when the sun rose and a bird landed on a branch above us, singing its morning song. Isaac was already awake, watching me with a soft expression that made something flutter in my chest. "Good morning," he said quietly. "Good morning. We should go. If we ride hard, we can reach Thornhaven by evening." He nodded, but there was reluctance in his movements as we packed up camp. I felt it too, a strange unwillingness to return to the world, to face whatever waited at the end of this journey. Here, in the wilderness, we were just two people who had found comfort in each other. But Thornhaven would remind us of who we were, what we were, and all the reasons this fragile connection between us was impossible. Storm seemed to sense the urgency, picking her way swiftly over the rough terrain. Isaac held on tighter now, no longer shy about pressing close. His arms around my waist felt right in a way that terrified me. I had built my entire life on being independent, on needing no one. But somewhere in the past day and night, that had shifted. I wanted his presence. I wanted his warmth. I wanted things I had no right to want. "There," Isaac said suddenly, pointing ahead. "I see the village." Thornhaven spread across a valley below us, a collection of sturdy buildings clustered around a central square. Smoke rose from chimneys, and I could see figures moving between the houses. It looked peaceful, prosperous even. This was one of the few places where orcs and humans lived in relative harmony, drawn together by marriages like Brielle's or by simple pragmatism. The borderlands were hard enough without adding unnecessary conflict. As we rode down into the valley, I felt Isaac's grip tighten. "That is her house. The one with the blue door." I guided Storm toward it, my own heart beating faster. What would his sister think, seeing me bring her brother home? Would she welcome me or see me as a threat? Before we reached the house, the door flew open and a woman with dark hair ran out, followed by a massive orc man. "Isaac!" she screamed, launching herself at him as he dismounted. "Thank the gods we got your letter. I have been so worried." Isaac caught her, holding her tight. Over her shoulder he met the orc man's eyes. "Gracker, it is good to see you, brother." Gracker nodded, his tusked face breaking into a smile. "And you, Isaac, though I wish it were under better circumstances." His eyes shifted to me, curious and assessing. "And who is your companion?" "This is Kraska. She runs the trading post at the border and she brought me here when I had no other way. I owe her my life." Brielle pulled back from her brother and turned to look at me properly. She had Isaac's kind eyes, and her smile was warm and genuine. "Then we owe you our gratitude. Please come inside. You must be exhausted from the journey." I dismounted, suddenly uncertain. "I do not wish to intrude on your family time." "You are not intruding," Isaac said firmly. "You are a friend, and friends do not abandon each other at the doorstep." The word friend should have felt right, but instead it stung. I pushed the feeling aside and followed them into the house. Inside, Brielle bustled around, preparing tea and setting out food. Gracker took care of Storm, leading her to their small stable with practiced ease. Isaac paced anxiously. "How is Mother?" he asked. "Tell me honestly." Brielle's smile faded. "Not good. The healers say it is her heart. It could be days or weeks, but not longer. She asked for you every day, Isaac. She needs to see you." "Then I need to go to her. Now." "Eat something first," Brielle commanded in the voice of a younger sister who had long practice managing her brother. "Drink some tea. You look half dead yourself. You will do Mother no good if you collapse at her bedside." Reluctantly, Isaac sat. I took a seat across from him, accepting the tea Brielle pressed into my hands. It was good tea, better than anything I usually drank, fragrant with herbs I could not identify. "So," Brielle said, settling into a chair next to her brother and studying me with open curiosity. "How did you two meet?" Isaac told the story, and I found myself watching Brielle's face as understanding dawned. She looked between us with an expression that was far too knowing, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "You traveled together, slept together," she said slowly, a smile tugging at her lips. "Not like that," Isaac said quickly. "Kraska was kind enough to share her space because I had no coin for a room and she did not want to sleep alone. MMHMM. Brielle was definitely smiling now. "And then you rode together all day and camped together all night. And now you are both sitting in my kitchen looking at each other like the world might end if you glance away." "Brielle," Isaac said warningly, but there was no heat in it. Gracker returned then, saving us from further scrutiny. "Your horse is settled, Kraska. She is a fine animal. Thank you for tending to her." He sat down beside his wife, his large hand dwarfing hers as he took it. "Isaac, there is something you should know before you go to your mother. The journey to your family farm is not safe right now. There have been raids, human bandits targeting orc travelers. 2 people were killed last week on the road." Isaac's face paled. "Then how do I get to her?" "We will go with you," Gracker said simply. "Brielle and I and Kraska if she is willing. A larger group is safer, and no one will trouble a mixed party with 2 orc warriors." "I am no warrior," I protested. Gracker's eyes crinkled with amusement. "You carry yourself like one, and Isaac tells me you run a trading post alone on the border. That takes its own kind of strength." "I will come," I heard myself say, even though every practical instinct told me to leave, to go back to my post and my solitude. But the thought of leaving Isaac now, when he might still need help, was unbearable. "It is settled then," Brielle said. "We leave at first light. For tonight you will both stay here. Kraska, you can have the guest room, and Isaac, you can take the loft as always." I saw something flicker across Isaac's face, something that might have been disappointment, but he nodded. "Of course. Thank you." That night, lying alone in the guest room, I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The bed was comfortable, the room was warm, but something was wrong. I was alone again, and the darkness pressed in on me in a way it had not for the past 2 nights. A soft knock on the door startled me. "Kraska, are you awake?" "Yes." I sat up as Isaac slipped into the room, closing the door quietly behind him. "I could not sleep," he said, looking almost embarrassed. "I kept thinking about you down here alone, and I was up there alone, and I just thought." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "This is foolish. I am sorry. I should go. Stay." The word came out more pleading than I intended. "Please, I could not sleep either." He crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "I've gotten used to having you near. Is that strange? We have known each other for barely 2 days, but I feel like I can breathe better when you are close." "I feel it too." I shifted over, making room for him. "Just sleeping, like before." He lay down beside me, and I turned on my side facing him. In the moonlight from the window, his features were soft, vulnerable. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of my dark hair behind my pointed ear. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "I need you to know that whatever this is between us, it matters to me. You matter to me." My heart hammered in my chest. "Isaac, I know it is impossible. I know there are 100 reasons why we should not feel what we are feeling, but I cannot lie to you, Kraska. These past 2 days have been the happiest I have been in years, even with all the fear and worry, because I have been with you." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that we barely knew each other, that this was just the intimacy of shared hardship, but I could not lie either. "I have been alone for so long," I whispered. "I chose this life, this path between worlds, and I thought I could bear the loneliness. But then you walked into my trading post, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be seen, to be known, to matter to someone." He moved closer, his forehead almost touching mine. "I do not know what happens after we reach my mother. I do not know if I'm even thinking clearly right now, but I know I do not want to lose you. You will not lose me, I promise." We fell asleep like that, facing each other, sharing breath and warmth and hope. Morning came too quickly. Brielle had packed supplies for the journey, and Gracker had readied horses for all of us. The ride to Isaac's family farm would take most of the day, and we needed to move swiftly. The four of us rode out together as the sun climbed into the sky. Isaac and I rode Storm together again, while Brielle and Gracker shared a large draft horse that seemed perfectly suited to Gracker's massive frame. The morning was beautiful, spring flowers blooming along the roadside, but there was tension in the air. We all felt it, the sense that we were riding toward something dangerous. Around midday, we stopped to rest the horses and eat a quick meal. Brielle cornered me while the men checked the road ahead. "He cares for you," she said without preamble. "My brother, he cares for you deeply." "I know." "And you, how do you feel about him?" I looked at her, this human woman who had crossed every boundary to be with the orc man she loved. If anyone would understand, it was her. "I am terrified of what I feel, of what it means, of what it will cost," she smiled sadly. "Love always costs something. The question is whether what you gain is worth the price." She glanced over at Gracker, her expression softening. "For me, it was worth everything. My family rejected me, my friends turned away, my entire village called me traitor. But I gained a love that sustains me, a partner who sees me completely, a life that is mine and not some role I was supposed to play." "How did you find the courage?" "I was more afraid of losing him than I was of what people would say. When it came down to it, the choice was simple. A life with him, whatever that looked like, or a life without him that would have been safe and acceptable and completely empty." She put a hand on my arm. "You have that same choice ahead of you. I cannot tell you what to do, but I can tell you that love is rare and precious, and letting it go out of fear is something you will regret forever." Before I could respond, Gracker called out, "Riders approaching, many of them." We scrambled to mount up. Isaac's arms came around me, protective and tense. "Bandits?" he asked Gracker, "or worse. Ride hard. If we can reach the next village before they catch us, we might be safe." We took off at a gallop, Storm's hooves pounding the earth. Behind us, I could hear shouting, the thunder of pursuing horses. Brielle and Gracker pulled ahead, Gracker's military training evident in the way he guided their horse. But Storm was carrying 2 riders, and despite her strength, we were falling behind. "They are gaining," Isaac said in my ear, his voice tight with fear. "Hold on." I urged Storm faster, but I knew it was hopeless. There were too many of them, and they were too close. An arrow whistled past my ear, and Storm shied violently. I fought to keep control, but another arrow found its mark, sinking into Storm's flank. She screamed and stumbled, and suddenly we were falling, the world spinning sickeningly. We hit the ground hard. Pain exploded through my shoulder, but I forced myself to move, to roll toward Isaac. He was already trying to stand, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "Run," I told him. "Get to the village." "Not without you." The riders surrounded us, a dozen men on horseback, their faces hard and cruel. They were human, all of them, and the hatred in their eyes when they looked at me was visceral. "Well, well," their leader said, dismounting. He was a scarred man with cold eyes and a sword that had seen too much use. "What do we have here? Orcs and orc lovers, my favorite kind of prey." "We want no trouble," Gracker called. He and Brielle had circled back, and now he placed himself between us and the bandits. "Let them go. Your quarrel is not with them." "My quarrel is with anyone who consorts with monsters." The leader spat at Gracker's feet. "You are traitors to your own kind. The world would be better off without you." Everything happened at once. The bandits charged. Gracker roared and met them head-on, his axe a blur of motion. Brielle grabbed a sword from one of the fallen and fought with desperate courage. Isaac pulled me to my feet, putting himself between me and the nearest attacker. I had said I was no warrior, but I had not survived alone on the border by being helpless. I grabbed a fallen branch and swung it like a club, catching one bandit across the face. He went down hard. Isaac fought beside me, his soldier training evident in every efficient movement, but we were outnumbered and outmatched. Gracker was bleeding from multiple wounds, and Brielle was tiring. Isaac took a sword blow to his arm and cried out. I felt rage like I had never known, a primal fury that burned away fear. I do not remember much of what happened next. I remember screaming, remember fighting with everything I had. I remember the crack of bone as I brought the branch down on someone's skull. I remember Isaac falling, remember throwing myself over him as a blade descended. Then there were more shouts, different voices. The bandits were breaking, fleeing. Through the haze of battle rage, I saw more riders approaching, orc warriors from Thornhaven, drawn by Gracker's signal horn. The fight was over as quickly as it had begun. Bodies lay scattered on the road, most of them bandits. I looked down at Isaac beneath me, his face pale, blood soaking his shirt from the arm wound. "You are hurt," I said stupidly, my hands shaking as I tried to assess the damage. "So are you," he replied, nodding toward my shoulder where my own blood darkened my shirt around us. The Thornhaven warriors were securing the area and tending to the wounded. Gracker limped over, supporting a battered Brielle. "Is everyone alive?" he asked roughly. "Alive," I confirmed. "But Isaac needs a healer." "There is a village just ahead. We can make it if we hurry." They lifted us onto horses, Isaac and I sharing again despite our wounds. The ride to the village was a blur of pain and worry. Isaac's arm was bound tightly, but he had lost a lot of blood. I kept my arms around him, terrified he would slip away. The village healer was a kind older human woman who tusked over our injuries but worked efficiently. Isaac's wound was deep but clean, the blade missing anything vital. My shoulder was dislocated but not broken. She said it with practiced hands while I bit back screams. "You two are lucky," she said when she was done. "A few inches different and we would be preparing graves, not bandages." We recovered in the village for 2 days while the worst of the injuries healed. Isaac fretted constantly about his mother, but Gracker sent a messenger ahead to let her know we were coming and what had delayed us. The response came back quickly. She was holding on, waiting for her son. During those 2 days, something shifted between Isaac and me. Maybe it was nearly dying together. Maybe it was the way we had fought side by side without thought or hesitation. Maybe it was simply that we had run out of reasons to deny what we felt. On the second night, when we were alone in the small room the village had given us, Isaac took my hand. "I could have lost you," he said quietly. "When that blade came down, I thought I had lost you, and in that moment I realized something. I realized that I would rather have one day with you than a lifetime without you. I realized that I love you, Kraska. However impossible that is, however foolish, I love you." My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. "I love you too. I have been fighting it, telling myself it was just the circumstances, just the shared danger. But it is not. It is you. Your kindness, your courage, your grief and hope and determination. I love all of you, Isaac Ellsworth, and I am terrified of what that means." He pulled me close, careful of our injuries, and kissed me. It was gentle and sweet and tasted of hope. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I do not have answers," he said. "I do not know how we make this work, but I know I want to try. I know I want you in my life, whatever that looks like. I want that too." On the third day, we continued the journey to Isaac's family farm. We rode slowly, both to spare our injuries and because we knew what waited at the end. His mother was dying, and this might be goodbye. The farm was modest but well kept, fields of grain stretching toward the horizon. The house was small and tidy, flowers blooming in careful beds around the porch. As we approached, an older woman came out, leaning heavily on a cane. "Isaac," she called, her voice reedy but strong. "My boy, you came." He was off the horse and running to her before I could speak, catching her in a careful embrace. She was frail. I could see that even from a distance, her skin paper thin and her breathing labored. But her eyes were sharp and alert as she looked over his shoulder at me. "And who is this?" she asked. "Mother, this is Kraska. She saved my life, several times." He turned back to me, extending his hand to help me dismount. "Kraska, this is my mother, Alara." Alara's eyes widened slightly as she took in my green skin, my tusks, my orc features. But there was no hatred in her expression, only curiosity and a knowing look that reminded me uncomfortably of Brielle. "An orc woman," she said thoughtfully. "Well, come inside, all of you. I want to hear everything." Inside, the house was warm and welcoming, full of the kind of small personal touches that spoke of a life well lived. Gracker and Brielle settled in the sitting room while Isaac helped his mother to a chair by the fire. I stood awkwardly by the door, unsure of my place. "Sit, child," Alara commanded, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Do not hover like a ghost. If you are important to my son, then you are welcome in my home." I sat, aware of Isaac standing behind me, his good hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "Now," Alara said, "tell me how this happened. How my proper, careful son ended up falling in love with an orc woman." "Mother," Isaac protested, but she waved him silent. "I am dying, boy. I do not have time for pretense. I can see it in both your faces, clear as day. The question is what you plan to do about it." So we told her everything. The desperate arrival at my trading post, the journey to Thornhaven, the attack on the road. Alara listened without interruption, her sharp eyes moving between us. When we finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You love him?" she finally asked me directly. "Yes. And you," she said to Isaac, "you love her?" "Yes, more than I can express." Alara nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing, both of you. Life is too short and too hard to waste it on anything less than love." I learned that when I married Isaac's father against my family's wishes. He was a farmer. I was a merchant's daughter. They said it would never work. But we had 35 good years together, and I would not trade a single day of it. She reached out and took my hand with surprising strength. You take care of my boy, you hear me? He has a good heart but a tendency to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. He needs someone strong beside him. I will, I promised, my voice thick with emotion. And you, she said to Isaac, you remember that love requires courage. Do not let fear or other people's opinions rob you of happiness. Promise me. I promise, Mother. She smiled, satisfied, and settled back in her chair. Good. Now I can rest easy. We stayed at the farm for a week, helping with the chores and spending as much time with Alara as we could. She grew weaker each day, sleeping more and eating less. But she remained lucid and cheerful, telling stories of Isaac's childhood and embarrassing Brielle with tales of her rebellious youth. On the 7th day, just after dawn, Alara called Isaac to her bedside. I waited outside with Brielle and Gracker, giving them privacy for their goodbyes. When Isaac emerged, his eyes were red, but his expression was peaceful. She is gone, he said simply. She went peacefully, surrounded by family. It is what she wanted. We buried Alara in the family plot behind the house, under an old oak tree she had loved. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, attended by neighbors who spoke of her kindness and strength. I stood beside Isaac throughout, my hand in his, offering what comfort I could. After everyone had left, after the sun had set and the stars had come out, Isaac and I walked through the fields together. The spring night was cool and clear, full of the sound of crickets and the rustle of young plants. What happens now? I asked quietly. He was silent for a long moment, staring up at the stars. I have been thinking about that. This farm needs someone to run it, but I cannot do it alone, and I find I do not want to do anything alone anymore. He turned to face me, taking both my hands in his. Come back with me. Help me run this place. Build a life here with me. Isaac, people will talk. They will say terrible things. You will lose friends, maybe lose respect in the community. I know, and I do not care. Brielle chose love over acceptance, and she has never regretted it. I am making the same choice. I love you, Kraska. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to face whatever comes together. Will you stay with me? There were 1,000 reasons to say no. Practical reasons, logical reasons, reasons born of fear and self-preservation. But there was one overwhelming reason to say yes, one truth that eclipsed everything else. I will stay, I said. For as long as you want me, I will stay. He kissed me then, deep and thorough and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, he pulled something from his pocket. It was a simple ring, worn smooth with age. This was my grandmother's, he said. My mother gave it to me before she died. She said I should give it to the woman I wanted to marry. He dropped to one knee in the middle of the field, still holding my hand. I know we have only known each other a short time. I know there will be challenges ahead, but I also know that I want to face them with you. Kraska, will you marry me? The tears came freely now, running down my cheeks. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for me. Then he was standing and spinning me around, both of us laughing despite the tears, despite the grief, despite everything. We spent the next few days making plans and settling affairs. Gracker and Brielle returned to Thornhaven with promises to visit often and offers to help however they could. I sent word to my trading post, arranging for a trusted friend to take it over. It had been my sanctuary once, but I did not need it anymore. I had found a new home. The wedding was small and private, held in the same field where Isaac had proposed. The village priest hesitated when he saw me, but Isaac's glare and the surprising support of several neighbors convinced him to proceed. Brielle stood as my witness, and Gracker stood for Isaac, two unlikely friends united by love and courage. As we spoke our vows under the open sky, I felt the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. I was no longer the outcast orc, belonging nowhere. I was Isaac's wife, partner, and equal. I belonged here with him, building something new from the ruins of old hatreds. The months that followed were not easy. Some neighbors refused to speak to us. Others made their disapproval clear in sideways looks and whispered comments. But slowly, gradually, acceptance came. It helped that we worked hard, that we contributed to the community, that we proved ourselves trustworthy and kind. It helped more that we were visibly, undeniably happy. One evening in late summer, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, Isaac pulled me close and kissed my temple. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Giving up your independence, tying yourself to a foolish human man and his grief and his farm?" I thought about it seriously, about everything I had given up and everything I had gained. "No," I said honestly. "I regret nothing. You gave me something I did not even know I was missing. A home, a purpose, a love that makes me brave enough to face whatever comes. You did the same for me." He laced his fingers through mine, the ring on my hand catching the fading light. "That first night when I stumbled into your trading post, I was lost. I thought I was just looking for a place to rest, but I was really looking for you. For someone who saw me, who understood me, who made me feel less alone in the world." "I only hate sleeping alone," I reminded him, smiling at the memory. "Best decision I ever made, agreeing to share your bed," he grinned. "Even if it was just for sleeping." "Liar. You thought I was going to eat you. Maybe a little. But you looked so fierce and so vulnerable at the same time, I could not resist." We sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the first stars appeared. Somewhere in the fields, crickets began their evening song. The air smelled of growing things and earth and home. "Isaac," I said after a while, "yes, thank you, for being brave enough to love me." He turned to face me fully, his expression serious and tender. "Thank you for being brave enough to let me. For choosing this life, this path, when you could have chosen safety and solitude. I chose you. I will always choose you." As darkness fell and we made our way inside, I felt a peace I had never known before. The house was warm and welcoming, full of the little touches we had added together. Books on the shelves, herbs hanging from the rafters, a new blanket on the bed that Brielle had made as a wedding gift. We had built this together, Isaac and I. A home, a life, a future. That night, lying in bed with his arms around me, listening to his steady breathing as he drifted toward sleep, I thought about that first desperate night when he had stumbled into my trading post. I had offered him shelter because I hated sleeping alone, never imagining that simple act would transform both our lives. But maybe that was how the best things happened. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through small acts of kindness. Through being brave enough to reach out when you were lonely. Through saying yes when everything told you to say no. Through choosing love, even when it was complicated and difficult and terrifying. "I love you," I whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," he murmured back, already half asleep. His arms tightened around me, every single day more than the day before. I smiled and let my eyes drift closed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new struggles, new moments where we would have to prove ourselves to a skeptical world. But tonight, we were just two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful from loneliness and hope. Tonight, we were home. The harvest season arrived, and with it came hard work that left us exhausted but satisfied. Isaac taught me the rhythms of farm life, the careful timing of planting and reaping, the patience required to coax life from the earth. I brought my own knowledge of trade and negotiation, helping him get better prices for the crops and establishing new connections with orc and human merchants alike. Word spread about the mixed couple running the Ellsworth farm, and it drew curiosity from far and wide. Some came with prejudice and left with their assumptions challenged. Others came with genuine interest and became friends. Slowly but surely, we built a community around us, people who believed that love could bridge divides. One cool autumn afternoon, a young human man arrived at our door with an orc woman by his side. They looked nervous and hopeful in equal measure. "Are you Isaac and Kraska Ellsworth?" the man asked. "We are," Isaac replied, stepping forward. "How can we help you? We heard about you. About how you made it work, despite everything." The young woman glanced at her companion, then back at us. "We are in love, but our families will not accept it. We thought maybe you could tell us how you did it, how you found the courage." Isaac looked at me, and I saw my own thoughts reflected in his eyes. We had become something we never intended to be, symbols of hope for others facing the same impossible choices. "Come in," I said warmly, stepping aside. "We will tell you our story and you can decide what it means for yours." As they settled at our kitchen table and Isaac began to speak, I felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it nearly overwhelmed me. This was our legacy, I realized, not just the farm or the crops or the home we had built. It was this, showing others that love could triumph, that courage was possible, that a different world could be imagined and achieved. The young couple stayed for dinner, asking questions and sharing their own story. When they finally left, as the sun was setting, they looked lighter somehow. More hopeful, more brave. "We did that," Isaac said wonderingly as we watched them ride away. "We gave them hope." "We gave them an example," I corrected. "They have to find their own courage." "True. But sometimes examples are enough to start." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "I am proud of us, Kraska, proud of what we have built and what we represent. So am I. That winter was harsh, the snow piling high and the cold biting deep. But our home was warm, our stores were full, and we had each other. On the longest, darkest nights, we would lie together in our bed, sharing stories and dreams and quiet laughter." One such night, Isaac propped himself up on one elbow and looked down at me with an expression I had learned to recognize. It was the look he got when he was about to say something important. "What?" I asked, smiling up at him. "I was thinking about how we met, how desperate I was, how lost. How I walked into your trading post expecting nothing more than a night's rest if I could afford it." His finger traced the line of my jaw gently. "I never imagined I would find love, find home, find the other half of my soul. Romantic," I teased, but my voice was soft. "I am serious. You saved me, Kraska. Not just from the bandits or the cold or the exhaustion. You saved me from a life of loneliness and grief. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning, to keep trying, to believe in the future. You did the same for me. I was so alone before you came. I thought I was strong enough to live without connection, without love. But I was just surviving, not living. You taught me the difference." He leaned down and kissed me, slow and deep and full of the certainty that had grown between us. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "Promise me something," he said, "anything. Promise me that no matter what comes, no matter what challenges we will face them together. That we will never let fear or doubt or the opinions of others come between us." "I promise," I said solemnly. "Together always." "Together always," he echoed. Spring returned, as it always did, bringing with it new life and new possibilities. Brielle announced that she was pregnant, and the joy in our extended family was palpable. Gracker was beside himself with excitement, already planning additions to their house and talking about teaching his child to ride. "You two should think about children," Brielle said to us during one visit, her hand resting on her growing belly. "You would make wonderful parents." Isaac and I exchanged a glance. We had talked about it, late at night when the rest of the world was sleeping. The practical concerns were real. Would our children be accepted? Would they face prejudice from both humans and orcs? What kind of world were we bringing them into? But underneath the worries was a growing desire, a sense that our family felt incomplete. "Maybe," I said carefully. "We have been thinking about it." "Think faster," Brielle advised with a grin. "I want my children to have cousins to play with." That summer my suspicions were confirmed. I was pregnant. When I told Isaac, he lifted me off my feet and spun me around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are going to be parents," he said incredulously. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be wonderful," I assured him. "Overprotective and anxious, but wonderful." He was indeed both of those things as the months passed. He fretted over my health, insisted I rest more, and drove me slightly crazy with his constant concern. But it came from love, and I could not truly be annoyed. The village midwife who agreed to help with the birth was a practical woman named Margaret who had delivered half the babies in the area. She took one look at me and declared that I was healthy as a horse and would have no trouble. "Though the baby might be larger than average," she noted. "Orc blood tends to produce sturdy children. Are you prepared for that?" "We will manage," Isaac said firmly, his hand tight in mine. On a cold winter morning, just after the new year, our daughter was born. The labor was long and difficult, but when I finally held her in my arms, all the pain disappeared. She was perfect, with my green-tinted skin and his delicate features, with tiny tusks just beginning to show and his soft brown eyes. "What should we name her?" Isaac asked, sitting beside me on the bed and gazing at his daughter with absolute wonder. "Rose," I said. It had been his grandmother's name, the woman who had owned the ring I now wore. "Rose Ellsworth." "Rose," he repeated softly, touching her tiny hand. "Welcome to the world, little one. We are so happy you are here." Those early months were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Rose was a good baby, curious and alert, already showing signs of her father's intelligence and her mother's stubbornness. Visitors came from near and far to see the child who represented the future, the possibility of true unity between the races, but we tried not to burden her with those expectations. To us, she was simply our daughter, perfect and beloved. One evening when Rose was about 6 months old, I found Isaac sitting on the porch, holding her and humming a lullaby his mother used to sing. The setting sun cast golden light over them both, and my heart swelled with so much love I thought it might burst. "You know," I said, settling beside them, "that night you walked into my trading post, if someone had told me this is where we would end up, I would have thought they were insane." Isaac laughed quietly, careful not to disturb Rose, who was dozing against his chest. "I would have too. I was just looking for a place to sleep, not for a wife and a family and a whole new life. I am glad you were desperate enough to accept my strange offer. I am glad you were lonely enough to make it." He shifted Rose slightly and reached for my hand. "I am glad for all of it, actually. The fear, the uncertainty, the challenges, because it brought us here to this moment, to this life we have built." I leaned my head on his shoulder, watching Rose sleep. "Do you think she will understand when she is older what it means to be both human and orc, the weight of what she represents?" "I think she will understand that she is loved, that she comes from courage and hope, that her very existence is proof that the old hatreds do not have to define the future." He kissed the top of Rose's head gently. And I think she will be strong enough to carry whatever challenges come with that. We will help her, I said. We will teach her to be proud of who she is, all of who she is. Yes, together. That word had become our anchor, our promise, our guiding principle. Together we had faced impossible odds. Together we had built a home and a family. Together we would raise our daughter and show her that love was stronger than hate, that courage could change the world. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the three of us sat on that porch, a family united against a world that had tried to keep us apart. And I knew with absolute certainty that we had won, not through grand battles or dramatic gestures, but through simple persistence, through choosing each other every single day, through being brave enough to say yes when everything else said no. Years passed, and Rose grew into a bright, confident child who moved easily between human and orc communities. She had her father's kindness and her mother's strength, and she seemed genuinely puzzled when anyone suggested there was anything strange about her heritage. "But I am just me," she would say with childish logic. "Why does it matter what color my skin is or whether I have tusks?" "It should not matter," Isaac would tell her. "And because of brave people like your mother, because of families like ours, someday it will not matter. But for now, some people still hold on to old fears and old hatreds." "Then they are foolish," Rose would declare, and we could never argue with that. Brielle and Gracker's son, a boisterous boy named Thorin, became Rose's closest friend and partner in mischief. Watching them play together, seeing how naturally they accepted each other, gave me hope for the future in a way nothing else could. The farm prospered under our care, becoming known not just for its crops, but for the welcome it offered to anyone who came with an open heart. We hosted gatherings where humans and orcs ate together, traded stories, and slowly learned to see each other as people rather than enemies. It was not always easy. There were setbacks and disappointments, moments when prejudice reared its ugly head and reminded us how much work remained. But we persisted, supported by a growing network of friends and allies who believed in what we were building. On our 5th wedding anniversary, Isaac gave me a gift. It was a painting, done by a traveling artist who had stayed with us for a week. The painting showed our farm as seen from the road, the house warm and welcoming in the sunset light, flowers blooming in the garden, and 3 figures on the porch, Isaac, me, and Rose between us. "I wanted you to have something that captured this," Isaac explained as I stared at the painting with tears in my eyes. "This moment in our lives, this home we have built, this family we created against all odds, so you will always remember how far we have come." "I could never forget," I said, pulling him close. "Every single day I wake up grateful for the choice we made, for the life we chose together. Even though it has been hard, especially because it has been hard. Easy things are rarely worth having, but this, us, our family, our life. This is worth everything." That night, after Rose was asleep, we sat together in front of the fire, the painting hanging on the wall where we could see it. Isaac's arms were around me, my head resting on his chest, and I felt the deep contentment that came from knowing I was exactly where I belonged. "You remember that first night?" he asked quietly. "When I asked if I could share your bed and you looked at me like I might be insane." "I thought you were either very brave or very stupid," I admitted. "Turns out you were both," he laughed, the vibration rumbling through his chest. "Probably accurate, but desperation makes you brave, and loneliness makes you willing to take risks you normally would not. I am glad you took the risk, glad you trusted me enough to be vulnerable to admit you hated sleeping alone. Best admission I ever made." His arms tightened around me, "because it led to this, to you, to us, to everything that matters." We sat in silence for a while, watching the flames dance and listening to the quiet sounds of our home settling for the night. Outside, the wind whispered through the fields, carrying the scent of growing things and the promise of harvest. "Isaac," I said eventually. I love you." I know I say it often, but I need you to know that it never stops being true. Every day I love you more than the day before. Every day I am more grateful that you walked into my trading post that night. He tilted my face up and kissed me, slow and sweet. "I love you too. More than words can express. You are my home, Kraska. My partner, my love, my everything." The fire burned low and we made our way upstairs to bed, checking on Rose on the way. She was sprawled across her bed, covers kicked off, one arm wrapped around the stuffed bear Gracker had made her. We covered her gently and stood watching her sleep for a moment, marveling as we always did at the miracle of her existence. In our own room, we settled into bed, falling naturally into the position that had become our habit, turned toward each other, close enough to touch, sharing warmth and breath and presence. "Not for that," Isaac murmured sleepily, echoing the words I had said that first night. "I only hate sleeping alone." "Liar," I accused gently. "You love sleeping alone with me, true, best kind of alone there is." His hand found mine under the covers, lacing our fingers together. "Promise me we will always have this, no matter how busy we get or how many demands life makes. Promise me we will always come back to this, to us, to sleeping side by side and waking up together." "I promise. Always together, remember?" "Always together," he agreed, already drifting toward sleep. I lay awake a little longer, listening to his breathing even out, feeling the steady beat of his heart through our joined hands. I thought about the girl I had been, alone and defensive in her trading post, convinced that solitude was strength. I thought about the man he had been, lost and desperate, willing to make a strange bargain just to avoid another night alone. We had both been so broken in our own ways, so certain that we had to face the world alone. And then we had found each other, and everything had changed. Love had not made life easier. If anything, it had complicated everything, adding new worries and responsibilities and vulnerabilities. But it had made life worth living. It had transformed mere survival into something rich and meaningful and beautiful. As I finally let my eyes close and sleep claim me, my last thought was one of profound gratitude. Gratitude for that desperate night when a stranger walked into my life. Gratitude for the courage to say yes when fear told me to refuse. Gratitude for every moment since, the hard ones and the joyful ones and all the ordinary ones in between. Gratitude for the simple truth that had changed everything. I only hate sleeping alone, and now I never would again. The years continued to unfold, bringing changes both expected and surprising. Rose grew into a young woman of remarkable character, confident in her identity and passionate about building bridges between communities. She apprenticed as a healer, drawn to the work of helping others, and her mixed heritage became an asset as she moved freely between human and orc settlements, trusted by both. Brielle and Gracker's family expanded with the birth of twin daughters, and our farm became a gathering place for the growing generation of mixed heritage children. We watched with hope as these young people formed friendships and alliances that would have been unthinkable a generation earlier. The trading post where Isaac and I first met was rebuilt and expanded, becoming a true crossroads where people of all backgrounds came together. The new owner, a young mixed heritage couple, honored its history by hanging a sign that read, "All are welcome who come in peace." Isaac's hair began to gray at the temples, and lines deepened around my eyes, but we grew old together with grace and contentment. Our morning routine became sacred, waking together, sharing quiet conversation over tea, planning the day's work side by side. On the morning of our 20th wedding anniversary, I woke to find Isaac already awake, watching me with that same soft expression he had worn that first morning in Thornhaven. "Good morning," I murmured. "How long have you been awake?" "Just a little while. I was thinking about how lucky I am." He reached out and tucked a strand of gray-streaked hair behind my ear. 20 years ago today, I married the woman who saved my life in more ways than one. 20 years of waking up beside you, and it still feels like magic. "You are getting sentimental in your old age," I teased, but my voice was thick with emotion. "I am old enough to know what matters. And you matter, Kraska. You and Rose and this life we built. That is what matters." We spent the day as we had spent so many others, working together on the farm, stopping for lunch with Rose and her new husband, a kind human man who worked as a teacher. In the evening, Brielle and Gracker arrived with their children, along with a few close friends, for a small celebration. As we gathered around the table, sharing food and laughter and memories, I looked around at the faces of people I loved. This was what we had created, Isaac and I. Not just a family or a farm, but a community. A place where love was stronger than fear, where difference was celebrated rather than condemned, where the future looked brighter than the past. "I want to propose a toast," Rose said, standing and raising her glass. "To my parents, who taught me that courage looks like choosing love even when the world tells you not to. Who showed me that family is not defined by blood alone, but by the bonds we choose to honor. Who proved that two people from different worlds can build something beautiful together." Her eyes shone with tears. "Thank you for being brave enough to love each other. Thank you for creating a home where I could grow up knowing I was perfect exactly as I am. Thank you for changing the world, one small act of kindness at a time." We drank to that, and to many other things. To love and courage and hope. To the hard work of building bridges. To the next generation and the one after that. To all the desperate souls who would find their way to kindness and connection. Later, when everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Isaac and I walked out to the porch as we had done countless times before. The summer night was warm, full of stars and the sound of crickets and the gentle rustling of the fields we had tended together. "Do you ever think about that first night?" I asked, leaning against his solid warmth. "When you stumbled into my trading post looking half dead, all the time. I think about how close I came to not stopping there, to pushing on despite the exhaustion. I think about how different my life would be if I had not walked through that door." He turned to face me, taking both my hands in his. "I think about how one moment of desperation and loneliness led to everything good in my life. I think about it too. About how lonely I was, how convinced that I had to be strong enough to face everything alone. About how terrified I was to make that offer, to admit I needed someone." I smiled up at him. "About how you looked at me like I was offering salvation instead of just a place in my bed. You were offering salvation. You just did not know it yet." He pulled me close, and we swayed gently to music only we could hear. "You saved me, Kraska, from loneliness and grief and a life half lived. You gave me purpose and joy and a love I thought I would never find again." "We saved each other," I corrected. "That is what love does. It saves us from the worst parts of ourselves and shows us what we could become." We stood like that for a long time, holding each other under the stars, two people who had defied all odds and expectations to build something lasting. Our love story was not the stuff of grand ballads or epic tales. It was quieter than that, built on small moments and daily choices. On waking up together and going to bed together. On facing challenges as a team. On choosing each other over and over again, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. "Come to bed," Isaac said eventually, his voice soft. "I am getting too old to stand out here all night." "You are not old, you are distinguished." "I am 53 and my back hurts. That is old." I laughed and let him lead me inside, up the stairs we had climbed together for 20 years, to the room that had been our sanctuary through everything. The bed was the same one from that first night in my trading post, transported here when I closed the business. It had held us through grief and joy, through passion and comfort, through 20 years of sleeping side by side. As we settled into our usual positions, facing each other, close enough to touch, I felt the same peace I had felt that first night when Isaac's presence had chased away the nightmares and the fear. "Thank you," I whispered into the darkness. "For what?" "For being brave enough to ask. For being desperate enough to trust a strange orc woman with your vulnerability. For starting all of this with 5 simple words." He knew which words I meant, the ones that had changed everything. "I only hate sleeping alone," he murmured, pulling me close. "Best thing I ever said. Best thing I ever heard." As sleep claimed us both, wrapped in each other's arms, I thought about all the lonely people in the world. All the ones who were too proud or too scared to admit they needed someone. All the chances for connection that were lost because fear won out over courage. I thought about the young couple who had come to us all those years ago, looking for hope. I wondered how many others we had inspired, how many lives we had touched by simply being ourselves, by refusing to let prejudice or fear define our choices. And I thought about that first desperate night, when a man stumbled into my trading post and I made an offer that defied all logic and caution. When we chose vulnerability over safety, connection over solitude, love over fear, it had not been easy. There had been pain and struggle and moments when we questioned everything. But it had been worth it. Every difficult moment, every challenge, every tear and every fear had been worth it for the life we had built, for the love we shared, for the family we created. As consciousness faded and dreams took hold, my last clear thought was simple and profound. I would choose this life, this love, this man, every single time. In every possible world, in every conceivable circumstance, I would always choose him, because some things are worth the risk. Some connections are worth defying the world for. Some loves are worth everything, and ours was one of them. The final years of our life together were gentle ones, full of the quiet contentment that comes from a life well lived. We grew old side by side, our bodies slowing but our love only deepening. Rose gave us grandchildren, beautiful mixed heritage babies who represented the future we had fought so hard to create. We stepped back from running the farm, turning it over to Rose and her husband while we took on the role of elders in the community. People came to us for advice, for mediation, for the wisdom that came from building bridges between worlds. Isaac's health began to fail in his 70th year, his heart growing weaker despite the healer's best efforts. We both knew his time was limited, but we faced it as we had faced everything, together. On a warm spring morning with flowers blooming in the garden and birds singing in the trees, Isaac woke beside me and smiled. "Good morning, love," he said, his voice thin but full of warmth. "Good morning," I replied, taking his hand. It was frailer now, the skin paper thin, but it still fit perfectly in mine. "I need to tell you something," he said, "while I still can. I am listening. Thank you for everything, for taking a chance on a desperate stranger, for building this life with me, for giving me 50 years of happiness I never thought I would have." His eyes, still bright despite his failing body, locked onto mine. "Thank you for teaching me that love is worth the risk. That courage is not the absence of fear but the choice to move forward despite it. That family is what you make it, not what others tell you it should be." Tears streamed down my face, but I smiled. Thank you for walking into my trading post. Thank you for being brave enough to admit you hated sleeping alone. Thank you for every day since, for every moment, for every choice to love me even when it was hard. It was never hard to love you, he whispered. It was the easiest thing I ever did. He slept then, his breathing shallow but peaceful. Our daughter came, and our grandchildren, and they gathered around the bed to say their goodbyes. Each one told Isaac what he had meant to them, how he had shaped their lives, how his courage had given them permission to be themselves. As the sun began to set, painting the room in golden light, Isaac's eyes opened one last time. He looked at me, and his smile was the same one he had given me that first morning, full of wonder and gratitude and love. Not for that, he whispered, echoing the words that had started everything. I only hate sleeping alone. You never will, I promised, holding him close. I am right here, I will always be right here. His eyes closed, his breathing stilled, and he was gone. The grief was crushing, a physical weight that made breathing difficult. But underneath it was gratitude. Gratitude for every moment we had shared, every challenge we had overcome, every joy we had celebrated. Gratitude that I had been brave enough to say yes that first night, that he had been desperate enough to ask. We buried Isaac beside his mother, under the oak tree he had loved. The ceremony was attended by hundreds of people. Humans and orcs united in their grief and their gratitude for the man who had helped show them a better way. I lived for several more years after that, watching our grandchildren grow and welcoming great-grandchildren into the world. But part of me was always waiting, ready to join Isaac when the time came. On a cool autumn evening, surrounded by family in the same bed where Isaac and I had slept for 50 years, I felt my own time approaching. Rose held one hand, Gracker the other, and around the room were gathered the people I loved most in the world. Tell me the story, Rose said softly. Tell me again how you and Father met. So I did one last time. I told her about the desperate stranger who stumbled into my trading post. About the strange offer I made, driven by loneliness and hope. About two broken people who found healing in each other's presence. He hated sleeping alone, I finished, my voice barely a whisper. And so did I. Such a simple thing to have in common, but it changed everything. As my eyes closed for the final time, I felt no fear, only anticipation. Because I knew with absolute certainty that Isaac was waiting, that I would never have to sleep alone again. My last thought was of that first morning, waking to sunlight and birdsong and the warmth of another person beside me. Of the wonder in Isaac's eyes when he looked at me, as if he could not quite believe his good fortune. I had felt the same wonder then. I felt it still. And then I was gone, released from my body, moving toward something warm and bright and welcoming. And there he was, looking exactly as he had that first night, tired and scared and desperately hopeful. Hello, Isaac said, extending his hand. I only hate sleeping alone. I took his hand, feeling the familiar warmth of his touch, and smiled through joyful tears. Then it is fortunate I am here. It is more than fortunate, it is everything. And together, as we had always been, we walked into whatever came next. Two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love that transcended death itself, who had proven that courage and kindness could change the world. Our story was over, but the ripples it created would continue for generations. In the mixed heritage children who grew up knowing they belonged. In the communities that learned to see past difference to common humanity. In every lonely person who found the courage to reach out to ask for connection, to admit they needed someone. Our legacy was not in monuments or grand achievements. It was in the simple truth we had lived and died by. Love is worth the risk. Courage is worth the cost, and none of us should have to face the darkness alone. That was our gift to the world. That was what we left behind, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.